except that I can't.
Good morning, everyone. I'm here today at the AfterChat of Humanity Rising for a deep dive with Josef Princiotta. He is an internationally recognized nonverbal communications consultant. His clients range from doctors and attorneys to audiences of up to 1,500 people who view his casino presentations in Las Vegas. He will be sharing with us the techniques he uses to read people. Josef has often been accused of having some kind of psychic talent, which he denies. He says he's doing the same things you're doing, but you don't know you're doing it. And he will prove that to you today. It's not a gift he has, it's a skill he teaches. Good morning, Josef.
Good morning. Good morning. It's always good to listen carefully to the introduction so I know who I'm supposed to be. And I'll try to live up to it.
You'll have no trouble with that. I know
There'll
you.
be humor is what I'm saying from the beginning. It's a fairly serious subject. I live in a noisy neighborhood. I've got my window open, so from time to time you'll hear some cars. It's a fairly serious subject. Everybody loves people watching, and that's kind of what it's all about. So we'll start by sharing the screen with a slide presentation that I have. This is a small one. There's 226 slides in this PowerPoint presentation. And you go, what? Yes, I'm obsessive compulsive. I produce a lot of PowerPoints for attorneys to use in court. And my body mapping idea, which is what we're talking about today, is what I've used in jury selection. And that was my scientific method of testing what I thought I was discovering and learning from others. I'm putting some things together with Asian philosophies as well. So we'll get into it by sharing the screen and going to start with the first slide. And I would hope the screen is clear to you, black with just a star in the middle. And this should give us I don't know if I should have pushed those buttons. There's not going to be any video, but it looks like it's coming out fairly smooth.
Looks good to me.
Yes?
Yep.
Interrupt anytime. I'm looking at all of you along the side as I'm doing the video. I hope you can see my hands, because sometimes I'll gesture or I'll bring in somebody to help me explain something a little closer to the bone. So if you can see me, I augment what I'm talking about. It's Princiotta, and it does present a question. I want you to do some face reading of the early kid there. But what I've been doing over the years shows that I really can't hold a job. Kind of several different assignments over the years, and we'll look briefly into those. But this is my focus currently. I'm really interested in the need for facilitating the healing in others and for monitoring our own responses to the daily problems. I was called a physiognomist when I did this for 2 radio stations in Canada. They saw me on a television show, and they asked me to come in and be interviewed, and then we ended up doing body language on the radio for about 2.5 years. I'd be called every other day, every other month by them. Now we have 2 opportunities here.
Can you make it larger?
Make what larger?
We don't. My screen is showing you as really big, and your your slides as relatively small.
That's your screen, Stan.
Well, I'm trying to play with my settings and I haven't been able
Good.
to.
Let's pause for a minute until you get that, and while you're working on that, let me just give you a slight idea here of let's see, what did I do?
Oh, I needed to go to standard. Okay, I'm sorry.
You got it?
Yes, it's much larger now.
Excellent.
Thank you.
So this is a little bit of my background. That the earlier picture of me was, I'm getting ahead of myself. They sent me to Japan, and Japan made a big impression on me. I did get a commendation from the ship that I served on, and I've been doing this kind of stuff for a long time, concerned with the morale and the welfare of the people around me. I was asked to produce a piece of work for Larry Carr and Barney Gottstein in front of their building. I put that well up 50 years ago, and they gave me a chance to put a piece of sculpture into Anchorage. When Howard Hughes died, because I do medically accurate photorealistic sculpture for the courts, they asked me to do a photorealistic sculpture of him for solid gold medallions that were given out to specific individuals who were important in his life. So you all know Howard Hughes from the Spruce Goose. This was the day that he flew it, and that's the photo, not the photograph, but a photograph on that day is what I used. I put his left eye in the center of the circle. We'll talk about right and left. But I had the opportunity to sit in his chair before they moved the Spruce Goose. I sat there and I show this picture because that big aluminum pipe is his oxygen mask, and it's the only one in the plane. So I do a little sculpture. I have interest in the oceans, and the ball is about 6 inches in diameter, give you an idea of the sculpture. That's another one from the series. And she's a spirit of spring. I like puzzles. This is a pendant I did for a couple. She's a Gemini and he's a Taurus. So the one pendant was done for both of them. And I love the puzzles of trying to put stuff together. This is one of my studies of Alaskan characters. It's about 2.5 inches tall. This one was a little taller. I call it the Raven's Dream. And I pause because it's a self-portrait. I'm the Raven. This is a comb that I did for the Playmate of the Year in 1978. I was associated with Playboy through photographer Bob Hooper in Vegas, as I had another residence in Vegas. And I produced a comb because the Playmate of the Year was known for her very long blonde hair. And this was one of the most popular covers that Playboy did, because you'll notice it's 78 before the computers and the junk took over. It's the front of the comb. It's got her fantasies about men and life and such, and Hefner wouldn't print the story. But I had the opportunity thanks to Bob Hooper. Thank you. That's the artwork stuff. Now, in body mapping today, we're going to focus on 3 areas: the ear and the face and the fingers of the hand. We're going to be looking at them, the shape and form, and we're going to be let's see, I'm jumping ahead, but they this is a newspaper article from the time when the Journal of Law called me Alaska's jury guru, and you notice they have to say a little bit of hocus pocus about it, but the point is that it works. I call it body mapping. I'm putting words on parts of the body that will help you understand that psychologically we relate to life through our body. But there's a more important purpose and objective today, and it's primarily that this time has to be worth your time. So if any time during this presentation you want to raise a hand, I can see you on the side. Let's stop and talk about what it is that you're concerned with. This is the overall always objective of body mapping. This is my objective, to give your intuitive self the ability to communicate with your logical self. That's kind of like Edith Bunker talking to Archie Bunker. Some people call it the rational self. But you know intuitively a great deal of what I'm about to express to you that I think is important about knowing the human body. You know it intuitively. We're going to try and bring it up to the surface where we deal with it consciously. As Shannon said, it's not a unique skill. It's a human thing. We can remember it. We can teach it. We can encourage it. The important thing about it is that body mapping gives you the opportunity to anticipate the expression of an inherited personality trait. The person may not even be aware that it's an inherited personality trait that they perform without thinking when presented with a particular situation. If you can understand that, you're really ahead of the game. And if you can recognize that so much of what we do is inherited energies, I don't care what relative also did it. I'm not looking for that at all. I'm trying to recognize that the very shape of your body tells me that you have an inherited trait. That's a hell of a statement to make. It's judging people by looks. It's a dangerous activity, but let's do it anyway, because it's fun. And we're going to be mapping some very personal things. We're going to map your thoughts. We're going to map memories, how they show in the body. The topic is, of course, body language, which does actually raise a question. Would anybody like to answer? Does any of you have an idea of what body language is? And of course, at this point, if we were given the time, and if it was an open class, then we'd all put our hands up and we'd have things and we'd talk about body language. But this morning, we're going to jump over that process and try to get to it a little bit better, a little quicker rather, not necessarily better. But if I can point out to you that I use certain elements of body language in order to help me recognize these inherited traits. And I say inherited traits because if you think about it in some way, we call it instinct. But when the bird builds her nest for her coming eggs, she makes all sorts of movements very, very necessary to the construction of a nest. And in fact, her only experience is she woke up in a nest, but the knowledge is there. And I think it's almost that complex in us. But certainly I look at body movement, body language. I look at the positions you take. I'm very interested in facial asymmetry. We'll talk about that in detail. I'm looking at different parts of the body, particularly the fingers and such, for rings and decoration or injuries. And actually, I do make some decisions based on color. And we can talk about that in detail. So let's, in looking at body language here, let's take body movement. What comes before a person would make a body movement, which would be the body language that we'd be able to read because we've put words on the part of the body they're moving.
I could hear you snoring, so I was like, all right.
Say
Catherine,
again?
can you mute, please? Unless you're
Sorry.
talking.
Sorry.
Oh,
Thank
I thought it was a question. Okay, so when I consider movement, that before movement, what's necessary? of course. You're not going to make a move unless you have the opportunity to make it. But even if you have the opportunity, you might not be free to make it. Now that, for example, would be a person who is standing at a bar talking to you and you're talking to them. Well, the two of you facing each other puts the bar on one person's right side and the other person's left side. And if you're both leaning on the bar is causing your body to make a movement. You're not really that free, the bar and the environment. So that's one example of needing the freedom to make the movement. If both hands are free, if a person has a cup of coffee in one hand and they're asked to hold the microphone, they're going to hold it with the other hand. And I don't know then, since their hands aren't free, I don't know which side of their body is holding the microphone. And we're going to learn that that's rather important to me. So if you have the opportunity and you have the freedom to move, there is still the primary ingredient. If it is not present, you don't do anything. So the same thing is true for taking a position. You need the opportunity, you need the freedom, but primarily you need the desire to move. This is what we must create in the jury. We must create a desire for that juror to move down the path that our argument provides. We have to find that element. And through body mapping, I think desire can be identified if we know where to look. If we understand how the desire forms in a person and how they express it, we might get ahead of the game. And my time in court, since my first case in 1965, when I wasn't asked as a jury expert, I was asked because of my sculpturing and photography work on the anatomy of a man accused of bank robbery in the photographs. And I attacked the photographs on behalf of the attorney. So I wasn't working with desire at that time, but that was my first case. It was in 65, and I've been working with attorneys ever since. So, oh, that's a big statement. Desire is within the self. Where the hell do you think it comes from? And the environment presents the opportunity. Sometimes this stuff is just basic. So, where is desire? Desire is undefined. It's recognized. It's a hunger. It's a concept. I want a better apartment. And you know all the elements of a good apartment all at once. If I ask you, I know a person who has apartments, what kind of apartment do you want? Then you have to bring the concept into some kind of communication. But the desire begins in the right brain as a concept, as a knowledge of what isn't and what could be and how it would feel, but it's undefined. It's known. You define it when you need to tell somebody about it. Yeah. And that's when your desire has to shift over to words, the same way your dream has to shift over from a dream to a story. When, if you're lucky to be close enough to sleeping with somebody, you wake up with that important person and they look at you and you say, oh, I had the most wonderful dream. And they say, yeah. And you go, I think it was dolphins. And it fades because the total picture was abandoned. It was abandoned to shift over to the speech, to the words, to the string of beads of words, and the picture starts to fall apart. So stay on the desire side until you really understand it well enough. Because when you go out the right side of the body, you're dealing with a totally different concept. You're dealing with the press secretary. Come on. She'll say anything. Oh, look, I put my hand up and my machine recognizes a hand up. Sorry, folks. I'm going to leave it up there for now because when I gesture, the machine recognizes a hand up and I get a hand up. Thank you for that. Negotiation out of the right side of the body. from the left brain, from Broca's center in the brain. So there's a difference between right and left. If it's communicated outward through the right side of the body, how does that happen? What? Oh, anybody? Who put that up? Is somebody ambidextrous in the group? Well, I have a question. It's all right. Oh yeah, and you people too. What about left-handers? Well, we'll talk about that, but I will get to the ambidextrous people. I have one question for you. It's real simple. That tells me whether you're a right or a left in this issue, because leading with the right hand and leading with the left hand is very important to me. And we are talking about right and left. We're not talking about right and wrong in people. We're making judgments. I'm going to be looking at size, shape, form, all of that. But let's stay on track. It's right side, left side of the body that I'm interested in. Let's look at anatomy a little bit. And the liver's on your right side. And your stomach, and your heart, that's on your left side. And then the doctor in the audience raises his hand and says, Mr. Princiotta, the heart is also on the right side of the body. Thank you very much. Let's look at the heart. The heart is a pump. It's a primary organ of the body. What does it pump? It pumps blood. And what does the right side of the heart do? The right side of the heart is involved with getting blood to and from the lungs. When it does, it pumps it back in through these veins into the left side of the heart. And the left ventricle supplies the blood to the body. So when you lead with your left hand, this is the left-hander's dilemma. They put their heart into the issue sometimes before everybody else. They take the meaning of the word you spoke for itself and don't always understand a double entendre or extra meaning to the word. Do we have some left-handers with us this morning? Okay, we can talk about them. So what about the right-hander? When you're shaking hands, what do I mean? I mean your handshake can deal with the poisons, with the rejections. Your right side can handle it as long as the heart and the more intimate self and the conceptual self is protected. The right side and the left side are very different, and it's very simple. It's because everybody is actually two bodies blended together so closely that they look like one body. They just want to be somebody. It's very important to remember you're talking with two people. So there are the two that look like one, part of the title of this talk. And we're going to explore them further. But let's look now at the one that looks like two. Because as we go further in this discussion of people, we're going to be talking about judgments. And we have to be careful, because a lot of times in our situation, you've noticed there's something in life that looks like it's two things, but it's really just one. You've seen the examples. There's stuff that looks like it's two. We know with hot and cold, for example, there is nothing cold. There are things less hot. There is no such thing as darkness. There is less light. If you want to cure the darkness, you light the light. If you want to cure the cold, you add the heat. Even on the battery in your car, the positive and negative sides of the battery are just one thing. Electrons. One side of the battery needs electrons. The other side of the battery has electrons. And so the field can be, and where are we going? To the big one. This is not two things. In my model of the world, my model of the universe, when I look at people, when I look at situations in the court with criminal defense, I don't see good and evil as two things. Good and evil is one thing. present and absent, because the universe is a work in progress. It's not finished. And if you want to cure the evil in the world, you add more good. You can't eradicate evil. It's not a thing. It's an absence of the love that we can provide. The work that needs to be done in the universe is going to be done by us. Right and left, not right and wrong. So let's get to the anticipated expression of an inherited personality trait. I think you need a good example. You need, and we'll get to one. This is my concept with the attorneys in the courtroom. We have a message. The juror has a style. The jury as a group has a style. That's their stationary. We have to put our message out in a way that they feel comfortable receiving it. Now, I do have some talent, but it would be ridiculous for me to say that if I look at you, I know what you're doing. I don't know what you're doing. The point in jury selection is that your body language clearly shows me how you do it. How you do what? Well, how you do whatever you do. Well, what's important now? Well, the important thing with the case is I know exactly what the jury's going to have to do. I know what photographs they're going to look at. I know what individuals they're going to listen to. I know the attitude and expression of my client, the attorney. And so if I know how you're going to approach those elements, we've got an edge. Body mapping through your inherited personality traits and your learned personality traits. If I can judge those ahead of time, just a small percentage, it's of a great benefit to getting our story across. So this is really what I'm looking at in the human beings. I'm looking at this balance between their right side and their left side as they go through life, trying to stay on the wire, but often falling off because we're not in touch with both sides of our pole. That's feminine. I don't do that crap. I'm a man. Well, you turn that pole around, you fall off the wire. The benefit of the balance pole is knowing way over on that side where you don't want to be, and way over on the other side where you don't want to be. Your better knowledge, your wider angle lens keeps you on the wire. So here we go. Remember that? Yeah. Remember that? Yeah. Yeah, we know that. Yeah. So the jury's final decision, it's a left side item. You got to satisfy the imagination. That's the dealing you got to have. Let's see here. What have I got? This is at the bottom. Oh, yeah, jump over the trials. I couldn't read my own writing because I've got the darn controls over. I wish Zoom would let me figure a way to lose that. Let's jump over the trials. There are several trials that are in the next slides, about 14 slides. So I won't go through those. These connections are in the chat. I'm on Zoom twice a day, every day, to answer the questions that this presentation brings up. We went over that. What are we doing? And we know that. And we know that. So what are we doing? Oh, we're going to remind them that everybody is two bodies. Okay. And an inherited personality trait, where does it come from? Well, we can show you that best in the shape and the form of your ears. Why do I focus on ears? All of you from acupuncture and such may know that all of the body parts are actually represented in the ear. This is one of my charts from the classes that I have put together. These points have been pretty well outlined on other acupuncture charts, and we know that the ear has all the parts of the body reflected, It's a little easier to see if we turn it around. And then maybe we can put a little indicator of where the eye is found in the ear. And as we look at the shape and form of the ear, I'm trying to get that control out of my way. What I'd like to point out to you is that the earlobe, because the earlobe is the face, and the eye is here, and this is the lower jaw, this is the mouth in here, this is the upper jaw, and the nose is related right here on the whole thing. So off of the earlobe is off the top of my head. That's an interesting thing to recognize. When you're looking at someone's earlobe, you're looking at the face and the head. And what's fascinating, and most people don't know, and you're learning today, is that the ear is the body of the brain. The face of the brain is the earlobe. The feet of the brain are up here where the feet are reflected in the earlobe. The ear is not designed, as I say here, to get sound into the head. In many animals, the ear is a hole in the head. Birds, for example. If you look at the ear on a hippopotamus, it's a clear funnel, and it's designed, or the ear on a deer or a mule. Those are ears designed, or a rabbit, to get the sound into the, this is not a shape designed to get sound into your head. This is a shape designed to be recognized by people on either side as to what kind of a person you're looking at, what their attitude toward life is, how rigid are they in their mental position. That'll be heavy at the top and closed over. The feet of the brain are closed. If this top is heavy and closed, it will be a person who's more stubborn. If the earlobe is full, like in Buddha, the representations, you know, of Spock with the point at the top, and all the elves don't have an arc at the top of the ear that's closed over like Ronald Reagan, just an arc. No, there's a weird little spike going out on this edge with Spock and elves and certain personalities. There's an abundance of earlobe in the Buddha that has a lot to tell you. So I look at the earlobe and the face of the brain as being then further defined by what kind of mask you put over your face, or how you treat the earlobe. Is the earring hiding the lobe, protecting the lobe, or adding downward some kind of a design? That now I ask you, when you see the earring hanging down, imagine it as a hat rising up from the person you're looking at. That is the story they want to tell you at that time. If it's a great big hoop earring, it's going to be a big story. If it's just a little tiny notice me, you got the idea. It's a simple thing and it works all the time. It's absolutely, well, I should tell you, there will be some cases where it's difficult. And that's these sons of guns that have no earlobe. What the heck do you do now? Or are we looking at an inherited personality trait? Is this kind of containment, this skin that's not floppy and available, it's under containment and restriction? So off the top of the head of the person who has this earlobe is not going to be abundant and generous and continuing. Yes, I've got big earlobes. It's going to be different. Can I tell you something? Let's find somebody who doesn't have an earlobe, and let's take a look at them and see how they present themselves. Now, this earlobe has surface, which means there will be an expression. If there were no surface, if there were no flesh at all, this would be a very restricting individual, very holding back to tell you the depth of what they think. Have you noticed whose earlobe this is by now? I think, I'm not surprised. But let's not look at him from an actor standpoint. Let's look at this, quite obviously, Clint Eastwood, from his job and his performance as a director. When it's Clint, not Clint's character, when it's Clint talking to the actors, when it's Clint directing everybody, when it's Clint who has to give you off the top of his head, he doesn't. He's known for saying not action, he says, okay. He's known for not saying cut, he says, okay, that's enough. He's known for not doing 20, 30 retakes until it's exact. He says, that's good, let's move on. He's known also that you don't touch him unless he has made it clear that it's time to be touched. If you have a friend or an associate, you'll know this already. If it's a new person and you're just meeting them for the first time, and you notice that the earlobe is not a full fleshy earlobe, don't try to reassure them with what your normal action is, to put a hand on the shoulder and say, I'm with you and we're going to get through this together. That I have watched attorneys do this to a client in trauma, and it's a don't touch me client, and by golly, you've ruined the relationship because they feel they've been grabbed. I didn't grab them. No, you have to understand that you're sending your message on their stationery, and their stationery, no earlobe person. Not that they don't want touch. There's a human being, we want touch, but this man must feel that he is in control. Now he's got another area that I'd like to draw your attention to. Do you notice when the mouth is relaxed, he exhibits lower teeth? The lower teeth are related, we'll learn about the skeleton in a little bit, to the toes. The upper teeth are the hands and the fingers. And the Jimmy Carter shows you upper teeth. He's a hands-on man. He'll do the job. Boom, boom, boom. This is a man whose words are going to be talking about position, not deeds. His position. And he's going to talk tough. Look at that indicator. It's a notice me. Where is it? It's on the business side of the mouth, above on the upper lip, not down around the low. The lower lip is intestines. The upper lip tells us about the condition of the lungs. He's got a little bit of a extra punch right there. Oh, what is that? Well, I think there may be some tough speech on the business side of an individual who has that notice me on their mouth. That's saying quite a lot. Give me another example. All right. Here is a woman with the same mark on her mouth, but her teeth show a little more upper teeth. This is a little more of a hands-on person. But she's got the mark, and she's going to talk to you and tell you in no uncertain words what she's thinking. There's something else that I really like about this picture. We get rid of that. And now let's look close with what we know about the ear.
Oh, goodness.
And what is she wearing? Shannon, do you see it? That earring?
I do. She's covering up her ear.
She's covered, it's covered, so it's a protection. It's a cover, it's a mask. And what does it look like? To me, it looks like the helmet from a suit of armor.
Mm-hmm.
So this face is telling you now. This goes now. I'm gonna go. Well, I don't want this to go on too long, but this is important. Let's see here. Don't I? Let's see. Another ear. This darn control bar has got me going. Okay. Let's look at another one. This is a very interesting person from a bit of history. There's a lot of exhibits now in this particular face, which is the reason I put him in here. Who is this? Well, this is Nietzsche. So we know a little bit about how he wrote about God is dead and all these things. He has a very interesting ear shape, for sure. But I also want you to notice mustache, because we're going to talk about that, and hair follicle. We can't judge so much about this hairdo because it might be the style of the century or such, but I'm interested in where the hair grows and where it recedes, and we'll talk about that. But let's look more closely at this ear. And you can see that we have an unusual shape up at the top, quite a lot of flesh here. Maybe we can look at it from the side and see it a little bit better. This is another picture of Nietzsche, and I'm using it because you notice the extreme here. He's had a receding to some degree, but it does not recede down the middle right here. Let's remember that for the future, but let's look at the ear for now. And what do we have? The ear is the body of the brain. This man's brain foundation, feet, right up in this area. He is very rigid in his position. He will very much argue to not be moved from his mental position. A very difficult man to move to another. I don't know what his position is, but I know how he holds on to it. Let's see now where we go from here. What do? I think I did this. No, that has gone to the wrong spot. Sorry, folks. Just made a mistake.
These things happen.
Yeah. Let's see here. We're going to go through all of these. This is all coming up in the future here. But I wanted to, oh, this is not nice at all. Come on.
I'm quite impressed with your slideshow, and thank you so much for doing this for us, Joseph.
I'm sorry to not be smooth here this morning, though.
Oh, these things.
Welcome. You're welcome. So we looked at her, and we went through those. And the reason I was hesitant to jump off was I wasn't sure I can get back because I've done those buttons. And what we're
Good morning.
Just a moment, Joseph. I'd just like to ask if everyone who is not speaking can mute, please. Ginger? Thank you. Joseph.
now we can move on from the ears to the face. Remembering some of the stuff that I've tried to point out, we're going to look at a face and we're going to make some judgments because I really do believe this. I think
Joseph.
Yeah.
Before we move to the away from the ear, can I ask a question about the earlobe?
Oh, of course. That's what this is about. We're taking it casual.
With a statement, because I want your opinion on this. And that is, I have always been taught that the earlobe is also in Indian folklore, that the earlobe, if it's a big earlobe, it indicates long life and strong constitution. So it's always been our practice, when I look at the earlobe and I look for lines on the earlobe indicating the heart. But you say that that's actually, well, that would be closer. That would be interesting. So I want to know if you know anything about that and what you have to say about that.
Yeah, the people say the earlobe represents long life because everybody has a fear of death. Palm reading has gotten into fortune telling because everybody's afraid of death, when palm reading actually has a great deal of other information that doesn't involve fear of death. When fear of death is governing the response, I look deeper into it and try and say, well, is that really what's going on? We want to feel that we're in control, and so we want to know ahead of time what's in store for us. And I don't do fortune telling. I do health counseling. From what I've learned of indications, the line that you're talking about in the ear, that line that goes down across, it's supposed to mean the heart, is BS and has been proven to my satisfaction, to be a very misleading indicator of the condition of the heart. If you're talking about the diagonal line that crosses the earlobe. That was publicized back in the, I think in the 80s. It got very popular. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. So if I were doing this in Vegas, I would have been asking this question to everybody. And on Zoom, we could say how many faces are on the Zoom call. But my point is that when I look at a human being, I see the two people. And the reason I see the two people is because I'm in such a habit of doing it. But the reason I look for it is so that I'm not surprised. And we're going to talk about why those surprises come from the right side and the left side. But first, let's look at some facial bilateral asymmetry. Is that understood by everybody? Your right side and your left side don't look the same. And if you had one of those wonderful mirrors they have over at Nordstrom's or one of those a little higher level store, you'll see that makeup mirror that's made actually from two mirrors. And the reflective material on a mirror is usually behind the glass. When you look at a mirror, the reflective stuff is usually in the back. So when you clean the mirror, you're not scraping on it. But a front surfaced mirror, which you have to clean really careful, doesn't have that little thickness of glass in it. So when they put two front surface mirrors together at right angles, and you look into the box, it's usually a box because they don't want you rubbing on the mirrors. You look at yourself the way other people see you, and it reverses things. And the first time I looked into one of those mirrors, I realized my nose went off to one side and my whole face was different. And that, to me, sends messages. Because of the two bodies that are glued together, when I can find how that balance is going on inside the person, I recognize the two that show themselves as one, and I'm less surprised by their actions. So if everybody's face, to me, is two faces horizontally, I say, let's take a minute here and go vertical on the face. We're going to be reading faces. We're going to be reading now, not only horizontally, but vertically. And what we're going to find is there are 6 levels to the human face that have presented themselves to me. And where did I find them? I found them because I was sent to Japan. And because my mentor in Japan was trained in China, in Chinese medicine, and in Chinese philosophy. And it was through my mentor in Japan that I was introduced to the I Ching. Let's take a minute and review just a bit of the I Ching so that the folks will know where I'm going. And if you want further information, this is one of the best books I have come across. I buy them in volume for my students. This is, she did R.L. Wing is her pseudonym. She did a beautiful job on this book. And from it, you'll learn about the I Ching, which is a stacking of 6 lines to make a hexagram, 3 lines above and 3 lines below. And the Chinese use it to figure out the universe and what's going on. And it's a wonderful philosophy and a wonderful experience to delve into the I Ching. And I do give a class on it. I teach ancient Chinese wisdom in 4 hours on a Saturday. That's what the brochure said. The I Ching is made up of 6 lines, and you notice we got 3 up at the top, we got 3 down here. If we put, for example, these together, we would get number 1, the first hexagram, and it would be all solid lines, and they'd call it heaven. And then the second hexagram, that would be all broken lines. So this one here would be on top of this one here, and that would be then number 2. So you'd have number 1 up there, and you have number 2 here, and then you'd have number 3, and then 4, and then the whole damn thing gets crazy. Now the reason the numbers look like this is because the Chinese did it to confuse us, and it's okay, we can get past it. So you would think that if you're going to read through all of them and find out the meaning, well, down here around number 64, that's the most you can have, 64 combinations, you'd think you'd find it. But in fact, the accurate, the formal, the appropriate, there's the word, the appropriate organization of the lines is not the 64th, it's the 63rd hexagram, and they call it after the end. And these lines then, let me get this bar out here. Gosh, I hate this bar. You can't see it, but that's what my arrow is trying to get rid of, is the control bar. So if this is after the end, and the Chinese are going to develop some philosophy or some information, the lines must have a meaning. And in the book I referenced, you would find that they start at the bottom. This is line number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you notice in this appropriate organization, the appropriate organization is to have openness at the top, and then at that next level, solid, and then to be gentle, and then to be firm. And then, what does that mean? Well, it doesn't mean a damn thing unless you can give some meaning to the lines. So let's look at the ancient meaning to each of the levels. Let's get rid of the lines. And let's consider the 6 levels of the human face. Well, it's a little confusing. Can you make it easier? I think so. Let's give color to each of the levels. As we give color to each of the levels, let's put them onto the face. This is one of the charts from my class. As we look at these levels of the human face, and remember the I Ching, even though the I Ching starts at the bottom, and we'll start at the bottom. Instinct on the human face, where the sun don't shine. Where the sun don't shine is instinct, and instinctively we protect it when we're not sure. It says, rely on your instinct. Remember that bottom line? Solid. What's the next one? Self-interest. Where do we see self-interest? In the lower lip. Go easy on your self-interest. Well, this level, the level of the fingers, we'll talk about the skull, the level of what I do in what you do, be firm. In social awareness, be open. In my authority and influence, be firm. In my wisdom, be open. So the 6 levels of the face come from the I Ching and project right onto the faces that I look at. So I see if there's a notice me on the face at any of these levels. Ground level, I think, on the face is at the nose. The horizon is up higher at the eyes. If you look out, the horizon is always at your eye level. The ground is below you. and we look at the material things in life and the non-material things in life gestured onto the face. When you scratch the top of the head, it's an attack on my wisdom. When you wear the bandana across the forehead or you carve a swastika into your forehead, you're dealing with your authority and such. All right, let's look at it from the top and get an idea of how we look at the face. I think these zones spread out from us from a kind of imaginary point at the top of the head there in a V shape. The things we're really concerned about, interested in, and then things we're aware of. How we respond, how we reflect the things we're concerned about, how we deal with them, how we deal with interest socially and such. I look back at the face for that information. The width of the nostrils gives me an idea of how broadly you are concerned. A very, very narrow nose on a very definite line is going to be more focused and less aware than the broad social nose that we see on the Winston Churchills and some of our actors that have a very Karl Malden kind of nose, cheekbones, and then out around the ears. So I'm looking at their interest and what signals they send to those zones around them with the rest of the jurors. Now, when we look at the skull, all those little words are the medical terms. This is a book I recommend. What Mies has done is he's analyzed the theme of the body and how it reproduces itself in bones and bones and bones, and how the whole body is in the skull. All the bones of the human body are reflected in the bones and the shapes of the skull. And I have gone further and claimed that all the inner organs are reflected in the brain and the brain stem. But nobody's written about that. But they have written about the bones, that this is a human being on their knees, bent away. This is the head. This is where the cerebellum is in the brain. If you look at the human brain, in the back here at the cerebellum is what they call the brain of the brain. And it has two lobes, just as our brain does. As you move farther up the skull, these are the lungs. The two hemispheres of the brain are the lungs. Then the bone system here puts the hip and the shoulder blade together. In palmistry, we learn about the two legs and the two arms, and in palmistry, the shoulder blade and the hip come together here, and the hips are also here. But there's a hip next to a shoulder blade here, and it is also here. So as we come out of the hip, we come to the femur, we come to the kneecap, the shins go to the heel, and the toes are pointing upward, the fingers are pointing down, and the elbow is out here. The zygomatic arch is the elbow. So we have a man or a woman, depending on your gender, sitting on your shoulders, turned around, facing backwards, and we're looking at the kidneys. When you look into the eyes, the kidneys feed to one, just as the optic nerve feeds to one. So this is then a person on you turned 180 degrees. Is that why the right side of the body is controlled by the left side of the brain? And the left side of the body is controlled by the right side of the brain, and there's a twist? Yes, there's a twist. So another interesting thing about the skull while we're here is if you think of the horizon, everything on the skull below the horizon is square. Everything on the skull above the horizon is circular. When you're touching your face, as you touch your face lower, you are touching more material in your thoughts. As you touch your face higher, you're dealing with less material elements in your thoughts. Ethereal, idea. I got an idea. Can you see it? Yeah, I think it's, now I got something I can sink my teeth into. Boom, 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 boom. The concept becomes material downward in the face. I have an idea, it booms, it booms, it booms, it becomes something real. As we move down, we move more toward material. As we move up, we move less toward material. We did this, we know this. Give us some people with bilateral asymmetry. And I'm moving on fast through these slides in order to get to this point, because I'm often asked, Joe, can you identify a criminal type? Because I think my brother-in-law is a son of a gun. No, because there is no criminal type. What there is a type of criminal. Bernie Madoff lived in New York and often walked in Central Park. But Bernie Madoff will not meet you in Central Park at night with a lead pipe in his hand. But he's a robber. He's a thief. And the fellow who will meet you in Central Park at night with a lead pipe in his hand hasn't got the slightest idea how to manipulate money. But they're both criminals. I didn't know they were both criminals until you said, you see that kid? He's a criminal. Well, I know he's not a Bernie Madoff kind of criminal from his body language. So there is a type. But if they're not criminal, they're still the type. And if you can recognize the type, then you'll know how they do whatever they do. And if you look at Bernie Madoff next time, you'll notice he doesn't have any lips at all. What does that mean? Well, the mucous membrane of the human mouth turns outward at closure. Close your mouth, your lips still show. Doesn't happen on any other animal. Every animal closes their mouth and it's hair follicle, skin. It's not mucus, skin. It's interesting about mucous membrane. You can put an aspirin underneath here and between your teeth and your mucous membrane, it'll go right into your system. Why? Because the mucous membrane has been kept moist. Yeah, so the aspirin, see where my mucous membrane is moist, the aspirin passes into my system. Yeah, and he says, your mucous membrane is dry. And I said, what? He says, look, see, they cut that skin off the end of your penis. Yeah. And the tip of your penis is dry. Yeah. It doesn't connect. What? When you dry the mucus, you can't put an aspirin on this part of your lip and get anything. It doesn't pass. It passes through the skin that's kept moist. So by cutting off, there's no connection now. Not like there used to be. It's just a point I point out because genital mutilation is a sin. But that's a sideline. So we're back to right and left. Yeah, and what happens? Well, there's a value to right and there's a value to left. And so when people are talking to you, you notice their head will shift. That's body language. Why does it shift? Why do they talk sometimes this way and they talk sometimes that way? Because the left side has a value. And when things come off the left side, they are knowledge and feeling, like the dream, belief. Boom, I got it. I can't define it, but I got it. Now, the other side is Archie Bunker. I'm going to show you what it's all about. I'm going to show you what I know, and I'm going to deal with you. And that's the right side. Is it that extreme? You mean when they're talking out of one side of their mouth or the other side of their mouth? It's a different thing. What the hell is it? How do you read it? I could have moved his head too, but it's too much Photoshop work. So when he's talking out of one side and the body gestures are on one side, in this case, it's the left side, then we can be pretty sure that it's coming from that side that dreams, the side that has desire, the side that he probably believes a lot of this stuff. However, especially with a left-hander, when it comes out of this side, it's a sales job. These are words he needs you to know, because the right side and the left side have a different energy coming out. The right side is the press secretary. She gives you alibis. She gives you all kinds of stories. While we're looking at this, if you're in control of how your hair is managed, you'll notice Shannon always organizes her hair and throws it over her left shoulder, not her business side, but her inspirational dream side and such. This is where her thoughts are given to us. And so I think that it shows how you think, and I think this guy is showing us how he thinks he thinks. And I hold to it. I'll try and get you another example that your hairstyle really does show me how you think. And so I give you a warning. This is very true. It's not that she doesn't want to know the whole story. She wants to know all the details, but not in the beginning. If you drag her through your story and she doesn't know where you're going, she will not pay nearly as much attention as if you tell her in the beginning where this is going and then you recap. This is not Crystal Gale. This is not Dolly Parton. This is the lady that you don't look at her earlobe. Look at her story. It's brief, it's concise. If it's pierced, that means she means it more than if it's a clip-on. And this, very much, if it's a real piercing, then we have a woman who has been truly sexually assaulted. If it's a number of earrings all the way down and they are piercings, there is a story that you may never be told, but you should be aware of it as you deal with this woman. It's personal injuries that we're talking about, and very much with that ugly thing that I've seen, the arrow that looks like it's going right through the ear or such. Piercings on the body are indications of assault. Piercings on the eyebrows are assault on one's authority. It happens on the left side, probably happened at home. Happens on the right side, probably happened out on the streets. This is an indicator there may be a story that she would like to tell. So let's really get to two that show themselves as one. Why did I pick these photos? Because we know these personalities. We're kind of senior citizens, and I wouldn't do this at junior high school, but we know these people a little bit. And so these photos come from the Associated Press. This is not Photoshop. I didn't treat these photos. I got them years ago so that I could use them as examples. What we'll do to look at his face is just right side it up, divide it down the middle. Let's look at one side reflected back onto itself to make a full face from the right side of Ronald Reagan. What does this tell us? It tells us how he's going to deliver the right side words. Alibi, negotiation, speech, salesman. What is the other side? This is where he's dreaming. This is his desires. This is the side of the personality that is not so public. We put two right sides together and we get this handshake business side liver on the sleeve. We put the two left sides together and we get his desires, his dreaming, his negotiation with himself and more personal things of values and such. So I see two people. Now, when we look at his partner, his second partner, his first partner didn't work out. This second partner, when she's out there in the public with him, the face that she presents is her business side. When they're home alone together, the woman that he's dealing with is much stronger. So I see two people when we look at them out there on the street, we see this couple. But when they're at home, so I did an article in the Las Vegas Sun before the election. And in it, I said, if Ronald Reagan becomes president, the nation will have their first woman president, Nancy Reagan. Four people that did. I'm jumping the slides to try to speed up here, but that says four people is what I see. Now, this is a woman I use because some people know about Jessica Savage. She was the first anchor woman to really do network news, and they hired her because she had this wonderful presentation. Strength, direct, organized, secure. She delivered the news. But when she was alone, that strength was not there. And if you know her story, her death is very tragic and very difficult situation. And what I'm pointing out is that when you see this face, you should be able to see the two faces that make it up and realize you're dealing with a very gentle woman who presents strength, but needs support. This face tells you that. This face doesn't. This would be a one who would look like she needs support, but doesn't. And you would make that mistake, perhaps, by treating her as a weakling when she's not. Whereas this other face, let's see if I can get rid of that and go to this. This woman would be treated as a strong individual, and she's not. So I'm trying to use those examples to give you some indication. For example, here's another fellow. If we divide his face down, does he look like, let's see, if we do that, oh, he's cheerful, he's strong, he's connected. Hey, this guy's going to do a hell of a job. This is going to be terrific. Where's he coming from? Whoops. No questions? Okay. So let's see. Oh, here's a face. My goodness. This Versailles Casino in Las Vegas. This was a terrific individual to use as an example this morning. This casino owner was the nicest guy. You could go down to the bus stop and there would be folks who knew him, who would meet you on the bus and say, you come into town? You got an ID out of town? I'll meet this guy. You got to go over to his casino. He looks like Barry Manilow, and he'll give you free lunch. He'll give you free dinner. He'll give you free breakfast. It's Cy. You got to meet him. And that was the handshake that you got, except there was another guy in there. There was another guy there. Wait a minute. Who is this? This is a very asymmetrical face. This is a guy who's going to give you a lot of surprises. Two different people living in there. Hunsney, I know the name. Wait a minute. Isn't he the guy? No, I didn't do criminal defense for this guy. No, I never even met him during the 14 years I was in Vegas, but it was during that time, 78. So when he was found out for what he was doing, the odd thing about it is I was in the Vegas towers, and one of the many apartments that they had all over town was 2 floors below me, but I never knew what was going on. Yeah, this is the animation is not smooth. That's Zoom, damn it. Wow. Well, we didn't need that. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. On a lighter side, who can we pick on a lighter side? Give me a face. All right. Oh, here's a face. Let's look at this. You know, Lonnie Anderson. He was married to Lonnie Anderson for a short while. When you look at how he wants to be seen, this is the public side. This is the right side, and it's very strong looking face. I really like the mustache. I think we can talk about mustaches and the image that they give to the face. Supposing his mustache was different. Now he's not into the material. You notice this mustache just goes out sideways. His mustache went out and down. Hey, I'm physical. Hey, I'm social. Salvador Dali. Hey, I'm ethereal. I get my rep. So the mustache is a man's reputation. It is what comes out ahead of his fingers, his deeds, his personal endeavors. So this is the publicity. The mustache is the publicity. I want you to think about my personal endeavors. And Salvador Dali wanted you up there. But Bert doesn't want that. Bert wants you to come down. I don't want to do that. We'll go back. We would go back to Nietzsche, and we'd see how Nietzsche had this huge, he wanted all this publicity about himself. Bert wants a very controlled publicity that's very material on his handshake side. But his other side, it gives us a warning that internally we're dealing with a different guy. This is his inspiration. And what am I pointing to? I'm pointing to that this guy proposed to Lonnie Anderson, and this is the guy she ended up living with, and the marriage didn't last. You should be able to look at his face and see the two people that he is. Now, in body language, let's go to the hands and the fingers. Do we need a break? Okay. I'm going to be looking in body language to map the value of the fingers, and we're going to talk about the value. And then we'll know if there's a ring on that finger's rewarded. If there's an injury to that finger, that level of life is in jeopardy of some kind. And if the finger's been cut off completely, the story is very, very powerful indeed. And tattoos usually tell their own story, but I will point out to you something that we've learned in criminal defense. Have you seen the tattoo that occurs here between where the thumb and the index finger skin come together? That the tattoos that show up right in this area. There's volumes written about those tattoos. They're frequently given or produced in jail, and they will relate to certain gangs and certain groups. So I look at all of that when I look at the hands. But before we get in, there's one thing that I want you to do right now, and that is if you got a coffee cup or something in your hands, have both hands free, and I'd like you to count to 10 using the fingers of your hand. And this is not something you normally do, counting on your fingers, but if you take a minute and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 today, there's a way that's comfortable. There's a way for you to say this finger is number 1. You might be opening it, you might be touching it with another finger. It's important that you remember how today, at this time, you would count and what finger would be the first finger and what would be the next and how you'd end up. Because the organization of the counting of those fingers at this moment might be different at another moment because of the environment, right? You need the opportunity, all of those things. But the way that you do count now tells me how you've organized the values of the fingers at this time. And it tells me what's important to you at this time. It will vary. Sometimes in the bank, you'll see people count by just tapping their fingers down as though they had an adding machine. Sometimes people are talking real big. Sometimes they grab, if you ever watch Jane Goodall again, when she talks about going to Africa, she'll raise a thumb and then she grabs it with the other hand and says the best thing that ever happened, and the protection of being around where she was and the confidence and such really show in the unusual way that she arranges her hands at that time. So now it's important for you to think of what order you used your fingers in. You're going to remember that as we look at what those values might be to the fingers. Of course, we have the value to the body, right side, left side. So when we look at hands, the first thing we're going to notice is that the fingers of the left hand discuss and express knowledge, belief, faith. The fingers of the right hand are more like business and a deal and a show. Of course, the thumb is the closest to the self, and the left thumb is the closest to the self, even more than the right thumb. The left thumb is the fact that you exist. The right thumb is that you're present. I'm here, thumb shows. Bobby Kennedy in the hotel just after being shot. The hand is expressed out on the floor and the thumb is buried as though you would pull it. The thumb is buried into the palm. In the hospitals before death, frequently the thumb loses the erection. The index finger is the first thing you come in touch with. If you exist, then the sides of the crib, the limits of the room, the menu, the laws, the rules that you learn, and the rules that you just hold in your heart, the morals. I love it. On stage, I'll do a gesture with the right index finger. I point to the audience and I say, "You come home by 10 o'clock because your mother and I love you." And the shift is, so the meaning of did you count with the index finger first? Did you use your index finger to touch another finger to make it number one? A lot of times a business guy will take his index finger and touch the customer. The thumb will go around and make the rounds 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it comes out last, or it's first. And in Japanese, the thumb buries number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you end up this way. In German, it's eins, and it comes up. So there's lots of ways to express that. Middle finger, desires, and what we're looking to touch, what feels good, what's important. We jump over that to the little finger. The little finger on the left hand would be my students, would be my patients, would be people I care about, but they're the general public, but I care about them. On the little finger of the right hand, it's the general public, but they're just the audience. They're just the observers. They're just business. They're the people on the outside looking at my business. And so the ring finger on the left hand connects what I want with the people who can get it for me, and it shows as my talent. On the left side, it's the activities I hold in my heart to connect with the public, but on the right side, it's the job and the service that I present. So when there's a ring on the ring finger of the right hand, it's the person's indication of how they feel about their work. In our culture, the ring finger of the left hand is given over for marriage. In some cultures, it's the middle finger. You have to look at the ring if it means a wedding, a ring on a woman's hand, usually a wedding band on a man's hand. What's the difference? A ring says, notice me. A band says connection and responsibility. So if there's a big ring on the left thumb of the individual, they feel really special about themselves, unless it's a band, not a big decoration ring, but a band. Then what do they feel? They feel they need protection. So you see these rings and you begin to understand how the individual feels about that level of their life. Have they lost one of these fingers or more? When did they lose it? And what were the conditions of their belief about their position in life and their success or failure? And we take it out on our body. We use our bodies to show the world the condition that we think we're in. The rings are an elevation, the injuries are negative. Let's look more individually to try to fit this again. If we're counting on certain fingers, what do they mean? Let's say it again with the thumbs. What the thumbs say is, I am and I'm present. You see a person walk into a room sometimes, a lot of times, cowboy type stuff. You walk into the bar and he's got his hands down in his belt and you don't see the fingers, but you see the thumbs. I'm here, I got nothing to do. Just the opposite. The thumbs are in the pants, the belt, and all the fingers show. I got something to do, but I'm not important about it. If the thumbs show, they want recognition. If the thumbs don't show, they don't need recognition. When I say put your hands on your hips, and I do this very often on the stage, we look at the person who puts their hands on their hips and the fingers show, they still have something to do. They are bigger because of something they're going to do. When the hands go on the hips and they're like a fist and the fingers point backwards and the person has their hands on their hips and their fingers are pointing backwards, you should recognize they want to be they want to be recognized for being big because of what they have done. The other person is big and has something to do. So when the person puts their hands out, elbows like that, and their fingers are pointing backwards, it's okay to stand in front of them and recognize how big they were, what they did, and agree with them, if you wish. In other words, face to face. But if they have their hands on their hips and their elbows are big and the fingers are forward and visible, do not stand in front of them to receive their comment. You're subconsciously impeding their progress toward their goal. Stand slightly to their side, recognizing and gesturing as you talk to them the path in front of them that they're indicating by showing you their fingers while they're out like this. Their energy is to move forward. The one whose fingers are pointing back, their energy is moving backward to their history. So when you communicate with them, you want to do it on their path. I think I've said enough about that. So we would go through the fingers and know that this is the rules and the limits. Again, it's the rules that I hold in my heart. That's belief and faith. The rules that I give you, that's what I've learned. And I want to teach you with the index finger. The middle finger is looking for the things that it wants and it receives and seeks. It's the longest finger and it seeks its way. This is the service and the work that I do. This is then my relationship to the public, what I show to people and what I ask to people to see. In other words, if the public on my left hand is my patients and my students, then I show them with this ring how I feel about them. The right hand is a ring used more to attract the audience to the, you see it in Vegas, you see the rings. We had a lot of fun with them. They noticed me. So it is that now the question is this. In the future, in what order will the next person you see be counting on their fingers and thereby telling you their story of what's important to them at the moment? You'll see them move the thumb, you'll see them touch the fingers. You may not know it all right away, but it'll begin to be a lot more than just Bill Gates coming on TV to talk to you, and you'll see him take his business hand and grab that little finger on the left hand and he does it all the time, and gesture that he is close to his customers. He sees them on the little finger of his left hand, but his business hand comes underneath and just milks the, the little finger. It's a gesture that I love to point out. Bill Gates to come out there and talk to you, and he's just milking the public all the time he talks. So I have fun. I hope you will too when you observe some of this stuff. So it's easy to remember. You'll have all this stuff down pat, and you won't have any trouble remembering it. And I'm sure that it's going to be very easy. And no, that's why I'm available twice a day to try to dig you out of the hole I've just buried you in. Thank you very much for giving me a chance to talk with you. I do believe this is true. There's diametrically opposed elements that appear in our life, and they aren't. But with our love, we can discover more about them and connect them and smooth out some of the rough spots. Thank you very much for this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Hallelujah. Amen. Praise this incredible presentation. Thank you so much, mate. Whoa. Got a lot to learn.
There we are.
When is your session on the I Ching and Tao Te Ching and all?
Thank you.
Did you have
It
a
does raise
question?
a lot of issues. It raises a lot of issues, and of course, in just an hour, I mean, I've been working on it since, so I can understand why you go, what the hell is he talking about? So I'm open to any questions. And of course, if you want to send me a photograph, I'll be happy to put it in Photoshop, split it, and meet me on Zoom, and we'll talk about what the faces show. And my head's on my left side. I really believe that. However, I make you a deal.
So right hand,
Yeah.
left side, now you're really confused, right?
There you go. This right hand, left side. It's very seldom. Good salesmen. I've known some salesmen who do that, and they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I said to him, you didn't even use your left hand. Nope, he went to whole 10. Oh, he's all business, but he's not first. The customer was first. He made the customer first by touching the customer. See, you can make somebody first by giving them your religion or giving them your faith. And there's this and this and this and this. You can, I've seen people do this when the business law, when I understand the business law, and they'll count that way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, using the right finger on the left hand, all sorts of ways. And I think you'll have some fun. You might need a chart, you might need a screen capture of what the fingers mean, but I believe it's cross-cultural. I think it's very neurological. It's inherent
In the human being. I really, really appreciate what you've said. I want to encourage people, and I'm coming to you, Susan. I want to encourage people to join Joseph on his open Zoom calls. He is very forthcoming and very willing to engage. I absolutely love to join Joseph on his times. So Susan, come on in.
Hey, all. So I just got here other than the after chat. So I missed almost all of it, Joseph. So I hope it's recorded. I can't wait to see it. The little last bit, good, because the little bit I saw looked really interesting. I want to know where all this knowledge came from at some point, and maybe you talked about that earlier, but also, do you find yourself spending all your time analyzing everything people do with their hands when you're talking to them? Does it? No, okay.
Nobody's paying me to do it, and it's work, And I just want you to be yourself, but I do recognize certain things, and sometimes that's the danger with this, is when you think you're reading something and you go, I get too impulsive, and that's one of my traits, is I want it all to happen too quickly, and I often don't let people do their thing. So, but as far as analyzing you to try to figure out, I don't need to, because we're not in a win-win situation, because there's no loss. So it's automatically that since there's nothing to lose, there's nothing to win, there's just the communication. I let it happen. But sometimes I recognize in somebody something very significant and do want to go on. Most of the time it's when they say something makes them feel, and I go, whoa, 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 retain your control over your health, and don't let things make you, and then I'll maybe go to work.
So when you have responded to us the other day, you responded to something we were discussing, and that kind of thing about, you've talked about the other things can't make you feel anything, which I happen to 100% agree with. That's just me. But when you were responding to some of the things we were talking about, I think yesterday, is part of your desire to, or inclination to respond, related to you're also watching what my hands are doing or my head's doing, and you can tell where that if the truth of what I'm saying is really the truth or not the truth, in your opinion, in your theory?
To some degree, when it's critical, then I'm really critical of what you're giving me. Is everything working fine and all of that, because there's an objective. But since our objective is just communication, I'll be watching the head a little bit, but not making conscious notes of it. When I am working, I can't speak. If I'm working, I don't go to that side of the brain.
Yeah.
Don't ask me to speak. I'll be drawing. I'll be humming to myself if I'm allowed to make sound, but don't ask me to speak when I'm working. For jury selection, I make sketches and all. In one of those trials that I skipped over, I would have pointed out to you that it was the second trial, and it was a major case, 8 counts of homicide, and we did jury selection for 3 months because we had already had one trial. And so in the 3 months of jury selection, we had a really good jury, and it's written up. 8 counts of serial homicide. At the end of the prosecution's case, we had a weekend to talk about it. I convinced the attorney. We came in on Monday morning, and the judge said, now the defense will present their case. And we stood up, the attorney stood up and said, we rest. And the judge said, what? We rest. We did not introduce a single element of evidence. We did not introduce a single witness. We won the entire case on cross-examination. And we had a jury that was terrific. And when he said that, when he stood up and said, we rest, we called him the gunner. He was in seat 7. He was a Vietnam vet. And we saw him do a thing with his fist, and I knew we were in good shape. Walked him out of the courtroom complete. This is a man who was charged originally with 7 counts of homicide, and he was from Bellingham, Washington, and the citizens of Bellingham put up $1 million cash money for him because they knew him, and they knew this was phony. That was how it started. But this woman prosecutor was going to do the case, and the attorney, this was the first case that I worked on with him. He said, I've heard about you. You want to do some jury work for me? I'd like you to do it. I said, well, I'm in Vegas this time on the first case. I said, I'm working on a Playboy set, and we're doing some photography, and I'm doing painting to make the set look. And he said, well, I'll send you the questionnaires. My concern, he said, is that the woman in this case the prosecutor is a woman. And so will that make a difference? I said, well, I'll look through your jury questionnaires. He sent me a big banker's box with all the questionnaires, the first case. This was the first trial. And I wasn't present for the jury selection, but I would go through the jury questionnaires, look at the handwriting, which I'd love to teach you signature analysis. That's a whole wonderful PowerPoint I've got on all these signatures. and I would look at the questionnaires and tell him ahead of time. And so we were on the set of Playboy, and it was because it's Alaska and it's Vegas. And I said, oh, this juror number 47 or such, I said, I'm really worried about him. Tomorrow, when you interview him, I would really be caught. He says, Joe, we've already done that. I said, well, God, you didn't keep him, did you? He said, no, but what are you saying? Oh, I said that the handwriting here is clear. This guy depends on women for all sorts of stuff. He's very, very receptive. He said, Joe, we asked him, do you know about the John Kenneth Peele is the defendant? Do you know about the John Kenneth Peele case? And the man said, yes. And he said, how do you learn about it? On TV, radio, newspapers? He says, newspapers. And he said, how do you read the newspaper? No, I live with my mother and my aunt. And during the day, they cut out of the newspaper the stories I should read. And when I come home at night, my mother and my aunt give me the parts of the newspaper I should read. I swear that's his testimony. I got it from his handwriting.
Wow.
So I worked with that lawyer on many cases. And when this case, John Kenneth Peele and that jury hung, they could not come to a decision. 2 years later, this same woman prosecutor brings the case against him again and now tries to get him, because of a tooth they found in the flames and stuff, tries to get him on 8 counts of homicide. Now, since we knew the case from the first trial, and since I was able to be in Juneau for 3 months of individual examination of potential jurors out of 176, I did a sketch of each one as they would be asked questions by the attorney. And we did an analysis and we got a jury. And as I say, at the end of that trial, without a single evidence, without a single witness, we walked the man out of the case. It was written up. I was written up as the jury selector was a bear of a man with rose-colored glasses. I remember she wrote me up that way.
Cool. I can't wait to listen to the whole presentation. I'm excited.
Thank you.
Excellent. Mary Thorpe, come on in.
I just wanted to say I instinctually knew I needed to be here today. I think I found out about this the first day I met you on the AfterChat. And I have something, it had something else. And I just went like, I don't care. I have to be here.
Oh my God.
It's so interesting. And one of the things that I got out of it, first of all, I got open to a whole world of stuff that, you know, what you said, you kind of instinctually know, but I didn't know. I had no clue. And one of the things that I'm really present to is that I can be easily read. Like, it's really hard for me to hide when I'm in, you know, like when I'm on calls and stuff. And I now have a new, like, I just noticed that I was tilting my head to one side and I straightened it right up.
I've created a monster.
I know. Oh, look at that. I'm like, I mean, I have such an awareness that I didn't have even a clue about before. And I can tell there are a million things to know. And I really appreciate all the work that you've done, Joseph.
Thank you.
And to have shared this little bit with us that opened a world to me, I just am incredibly appreciative, and I'll look forward to finding you more.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, Stan, what you got to say? Can't hear you.
It's that. All right, we fixed it. One of the things that Joseph has not made clear to people at the beginning is that you do most of your jury work with defendants. Is that right? Or do you do it with the prosecutors too?
Well, I was holding a hit. I thought your question would be longer, but I'm all right. I'm back. I'm
I
back.
have another question, but that was a simple one.
Good answer. No, I do medical malpractice. Excuse me. I do anatomical sculpture to show the jury why the doctor screwed up on the back surgery or the hernia surgery or such. I do the videotapes, day in the life of the quadriplegic because the seatbelt failed, and I do the three-dimensional modeling of the Takata seatbelt mechanism to show what we call a single point failure. And the girl was thrown out the window, and she's quadriplegic. So I do the videotapes of the day in the life of her, how she has to live. I do the three-dimensional modeling in the computer to show the jury how the seatbelt fits together and why the mechanism failed. I'll do product liability cases like that. I work in prosecution in 3 areas. I worked with Officer Ann Newell, who's retired now. She was Anchorage Police, and I work with the troopers in exploited children, child abuse cases, and child sexual abuse cases. I've done some exhibits because it's amazing that the jurors don't even understand the term penetration. And so we had to have certain exhibits made. No, it's a broad collection of cases I've worked on over the years. I've worked on one of the most important cases was Graham, Kirby, Belscheides, and Greenspun versus the United States, trying to demonstrate that the tax form is illegal. And we proved it was, and so they changed it, but they still do the same damn thing, and that is tax wages. There is no law in the United States that permits the taxation of wages. You have to voluntarily add your wages to your income because the tax is on income, not on wages. Wage tax is slavery. But we proved it, and then the government changed the term to earned income. So it's all income now, it's not wages. It's madness. But do I do cases? Yes. A variety, yes.
Okay, well, it sounds from what you just said, most of them are dealing with the victim, helping the victim. And if it's victim in certain cases is the person being accused.
Yeah.
Perhaps
Yeah,
falsely.
usually.
Yes, and then these product liability things, and I could see getting to know you, that sounds right. You are sensitive to the people involved and trying to help. What was my other question? I have another question. I'll come back with it later, but
This is a Remington trigger mechanism that is in almost all of their shotguns, and we have proven that people shoot themselves with this trigger mechanism because it doesn't lock up correctly. And we've done a lot of cases against Remington for people that have
follow that just from using my vacuum cleaner. I have a vacuum cleaner, and you pick the thing up and all of a sudden it starts running. Because
you have a good lawyer? I know a lawyer.
I bet
All
you
right.
know one or two, sir. Wonderful. I'd like to move on to Carol Sue. Come on in,
Yeah.
talk to us.
Okay. I love the presentation. Thank you so much. So much. Hey, what's it mean when I touch both sides?
It's real, and you feel protected, and you feel warm, and you're hugging me, and I'm hugging you.
Absolutely. Because all I could think of was how much I love you. That's all I could feel.
Thank you so much.
Yes, yes. I have so much appreciation for you. I can't tell you. No, and you're genuine. I just love you. So when I went to count on my fingers, I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I started on the left hand and ended with this thumb. What did that mean?
Now, when you did it, you were showing the palms to me. When you did it, were you showing the palms to the computer, or were you showing them to yourself? Who saw the palms?
I think they were away.
I think they were too, because you're just a show lady, and you show us and you keep showing us and you keep wanting to present yourself. And that's beautiful, because this is a declaration also of honesty. When the judge says, raise your right hand and swear, and I love to do this on the cases I can, go back into the judge's chambers after the case and say, there was one question when I had to get up and swear about the model that I made, the exhibit that I made, and how did I make it? And I was being tested. Yes, he says, what is it, Joe? Well, if I had done it this way, would that be okay? My hand is up. No. If I did it this way, would that be okay? No. Why? Because Judge, you read palms. And
And I
it's a
took a
declaration.
palmistry reading class in college and got credit for it.
There's a great deal of information where the body has no hair follicle. The surface of the eye, the surface of the lips, the reproductive organs, the soles of the feet, the palm of the hand. These are the places where there's no protection. The hair follicle is on the protective layer of the skin. But this is connection and declaration of your existence. I love it.
Thank you so much. Good question, Carol Sue. Diana, come on in.
Yeah, I have a slightly strange question, you might say. Talking about reading people, and you mentioned child abuse and if you want to have nothing to do with it, say so. Epstein?
I have a Zoom background, and all it says is not a single individual on Epstein's list has come to court yet. It doesn't say it exactly that way. He touched people so big that no. It's another Hensley. It's another the guy I showed you, and when you look at his face, well, I think that's a face of, like I say, Bernie Madoff is a face because of the no lips, no connection at all, no mucous membrane kissing the world at all. He's all on himself. Epstein is just, he's got the same things that Trump showed. This tremendous self-indulgence on the face is evident when you look at it. I'm sorry, maybe it's not evident to everybody, but I'd like it to be evident.
Yeah.
I'd like you to see that the self-indulgence on Epstein is clear. I'll work on getting some photos of him.
Okay, that would be interesting. And just one last thing, you're talking about hair on different parts of the body. Asians have very little hair. I mean, what does that say? But they still have hair, so that's enough, huh? On their arms.
No, there is, and there is also an openness. You'll find the eyebrows are very high relative to sometimes our eyebrows, and there's a vulnerability or an openness or a hesitance to move forward, a kind of a waiting. I talk about this in the general facial shape that we'll notice is more spoon-like or knife-like. There is a face that when you see it, it wants to move forward. The cheeks are not very fat. The nose is slim. The eyes are closer together. Animals that hunt have eyes in the front, and those that must hide have their eyes wide on the side. The Down's syndrome face does not move forward. The Down syndrome face is sensitive to itself, and the Asian face in some ways also is spoon shaped rather than knife shaped, so it waits for the group. And there's less of an individual out there on the own. I'm going to get out there, and so you'll see Epstein's face doesn't have a lot of flesh on it. It ain't Oprah Winfrey.
Okay.
It ain't Oprah's face with at the social level saying something. So it's Rumsfeld. It doesn't have any cushion. It doesn't have any. It's doing its thing. God, I do go on.
Yeah, just and then I'll leave because with cushion, that's also with age. When you're young, you've got a much more cushiony face, and as you get older.
The ear grows and the lobe keeps growing bigger as you get older.
On the
You got more and more to
jowls.
share. You got more and more to share. And yeah. Who else?
These are new. These are new.
Kurt is up next. Come on in, Kurt.
Wow. Muchas gracias. Thank you so much. Well,
Thank you.
thank you. The big thing, obviously, is for me to be a peacemaker, to be the peacemaker, and to be able to share that so others get to be able to experience it. How is it that this guy can do this?
The talent that you really have, it shows on your face in where your face says, notice me. I can ask anybody here watching you, looking at you now, the way your face is lit. It's very clear that of all of us, you have the deepest line between your eyebrows, vertical, right down the center, right at the forehead, right at the third eye. Where the body dips in is for me, and it's receptive. Where the body pushes out, it's an offering. It's for the world. It's a nipple. It's a nipple getting erect and offering and going out. It's a nose pushing first into the room to figure out what's there. It's an extension. It's for you. It extends. It's for the world. It's down the middle. And it's a depression. It's for me. So for you, here is a sensitivity and a receptivity at the authority level for organization. And that's your gift. And so there is an ability that you have to see that things are out of place. And you see them out of place with more sensitivity than others. Everybody sees stuff out of place. Everybody on this call has every issue that and every element of personality that we've been talking about. I'm saying some of us have turned it up over here and maybe at the same time turned this one down. And if you can recognize that, then you can sing their song with your lyrics. So your song is organized. I know where it belongs, put it back where it belongs, get this thing in line, help this place. And so you would be of great benefit to make sure things are in their right place. I don't know what the things are.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Beautiful. Susan, come on in.
So I've got at least 3 things so far, Joseph. I'm gonna name them off. You take what you want. Number 1, do you think that, and again, forgive me because I couldn't find the call. I couldn't find the presentation, but if you covered it, do you think this ability that you have honed to read what's going on is somehow inherent with each person, within each person? I feel like there are many times I feel something and know something and I don't have any reason because he turns his head this way or whatever. I don't have the defining reasons. Number 2, if you're born with a face that goes out, does that mean, why would that come in with you at birth? And is there a way to alter that, to expand it, to not just be about going out, but be able to learn how to be receptive? And number 3, all the things you talked about of how we express what we are, who we are, if I learn them and then pay attention, like Mary said, she realized she was all of a sudden tipping her head. And I say, oh, that means I'm kind of like self-absorbed and I don't want to be that. So let me tip it the other way and practice being not self-absorbed, or whatever head movement would go with that. Is it something we use to like choose to become the people we want to be? Is it a way we can train ourselves too by utilizing the movements? There you go. There's 3. Do what you want with them.
You would be born into life with the body shape that's shaped by what Rupert Sheldrake, and I agree with him, is a morphic field, a field of energy that began when the egg and the sperm decided, yes, we'll link up. Bingo, there's an envelope that the sperm and the egg now want to fill. I see you as a sculpture that makes itself from the inside out, as opposed to a sculpture of taking away from more than you to come down to you. No, You are this field and you grow into it. If part of you is traumatized and lost, it will try to regrow into that same field. It's the field that gives you your fingerprints and it gives you your touch on life. And no, you can't change it. You can use it. As he's 6'3". Wow, Charlie, did you see him? Hey, you want to play basketball? What? You want to play basketball? What's basketball? What the hell do you do, man? You're 6'3". I'm a jockey. You're a jockey? You're 6'3". Well, my dad has horses, and I never saw what basketball was. See, he's 6'3". He would apply himself if the opportunity was there and he had the freedom to make the move, you see. So he's not going to change his height. So you don't change the show, change the audience. So he's going to be this high and he's not going to win races as a jockey. And if we help him go over here, then it fits. Do I consciously move my, yes, when I go to work, absolutely. Everything I'm doing, yes. And you won't notice it necessarily if I'm good. But if you're the person I'm focusing on, we're beginning hypnosis, as far as I'm concerned. Because I'm working, because I have got to get you to a certain place in a certain amount of time, I become a little bit of a different person. But that's to manipulate you. And that's rarely my job. But it is sometimes when the attorney and I need to know a way to cross-examine this individual. And when we're in a deposition situation where I can, yeah, that's not very nice. It's not just real. It's not human. But it's a job. It's a job I do. Yeah.
Yes, I was referring more to me using my, manipulating myself with my body movements to.
I wanted to get to that last.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
Because I call that suicide. Don't commit suicide for me. Be whoever you want to be. For goodness sake, if you try to fabricate something now for some reason that you think you're doing something and you fabricate it, you're going to either have to continue to do that with me, or I'm suddenly going to be surprised and think, my God, I never thought Susan was like that. Because Susan wasn't Susan. She was being the Susan she thought she should be for this. Oh my goodness, that gets so layered.
That's not what I'm not saying to be it for you. I'm not saying to change myself for you or for my environment or for what I receive. I'm changing myself because let's say I find myself being Trump or being, someone who's not receptive to the world or something part of does not like.
Oh, you're just in touch with your,
we're doing on ourselves.
You're just in touch with your pole. You're in touch with your balance pole. That's wonderful. And you feel like you're tipping over to the side and you go, whoa, I think I'm going to pull my pole back. Oh, I misunderstood you.
Yeah. So I can use some
Of
of
course.
use
Maintain your balance.
Okay, just curious.
You are. Welcome.
I also want to say that I believe that we're divinely designed to be perfect in how we are, what our vessel is. And I love that you want to experiment with these tools that Joseph is offering. And I also see Bill. Hi, Bill, come and talk to us.
Hi, good morning. It's nice to meet you all. Joseph and Stan encouraged me to get up this god-awful early in the morning. And the one thing I've been Joseph's mentee now for, oh my goodness, many years, 30 maybe. But in any case, what I've learned by attending this morning is that it's so early, my dogs aren't even up yet. They've been asleep this whole time. Usually they're begging me for going out or food or something. But nice to meet you all. And thanks, Stan and Joseph, for encouraging me to attend. I'm sleepy though.
And what William is saying, that if you choose to go visit Joseph during the times that he's on twice a day, still often run into William, I think, because
Mhm.
I don't think I've gotten on that channel when William wasn't there. So it's been pleasant to get to know them both.
Thank you. Well, good enough. I guess I feel a little bit like Ringo Starr. All I can say is I hope I pass the audition.
Oh, more than that, I am so glad that you came and talked to us,
Thank you.
Joseph. This has been a true
you.
pleasure
Mhm.
to have these kind of intimate conversations like we do in the after chat and in a situation like this. You know, I really feel like, you know, these are private sessions. These are my friends. And to have you as one of my friends, I am deeply charmed. And thank you so, so much for being a part
Thank
of
you,
my
everybody.
reality.
Okay. That's a wrap.
Sounds good to me. Have a good day, everyone. Bye for now.
Zoom in peace. Zoom in peace.